How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode number 15 of Hitting for the Cycle. I'm Hank Indictor, and wait. Hold up. Time out. Nick Morgasen, this is your second time here? How many times do I have to tell you you're not allowed to crash this part? No, I'm kidding. We love having you on this whenever Danger calls. How's it going, Nick? This is, I believe, your second time on the show since the revival.
I'm doing well, Hank. The baseball playoffs are in full form. Teams are doing well. Some surprises. Let's go.
Yeah, no, I am really excited. But in any event, before we get right into the meat and potatoes of all this, I want to give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. You can find us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at HFTC where in addition to some short clips from the episodes, you can also find yours truly doing some recaps of the playoff games. And the playoff games have been pretty epic, if I say so myself. But, of course, you also can't forget about the network that we do our shows on. Follow the Empty the Bench podcast network at ETB Network on Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok. And, of course, don't forget about our YouTube channel. You can follow us at youtube.com/ETB network. And please do yourselves a favor. Hit that big red button down below. Ring-a-ding-ding-ding-ding that bell if you want to get notifications for all of our episodes. And I'm not, of course, just talking about the show. I am also talking about the 3&D. And I'm talking about the Namesake Show, which I believe the guy to my left hosts every week. So you may want to help him out there too. Just saying. And last but not least, please don't forget to follow the website, etbpodcast.com, where you can find a lot of great blogs. It's not like I even do anything for that part of the website at all. But anyways, you can find good blogs and more information as well. And speaking of blogs, my NFL picks just dropped this morning. You could get a read of those if you want to. And as soon as this episode is out, you will see pretty much a written form of a rant that we will be doing. But in any event, let's get right to it. Let's talk about the AL and the NLDS that have been going on. And I got to say, some of these series have been very surprising, although some of them were what we expected. But there is a lot to talk about, Nick. And why don't we start off by talking about the Orioles series? Because the Baltimore Orioles were a team that, you know, a lot of people thought would follow up a great season with a good playoff run. And understandably so, because this was the Orioles' first 100-win season since Jimmy Carter was president, to give you a little bit of perspective.
Wow.
1980. And funny enough, they didn't even make the playoffs the last time they won 100 games. Remember, there was no wild card series at the time.
Oh, my God. I forgot. That's right. That was before the rules were in place for that wild card.
Yeah, no, the Yankees edged them out with 103 wins. Orioles won, I think, 100. They only missed out in the playoffs by 2 or 3 games. And, you know, this was a team that a lot of people projected to finish in either 3rd or 4th place. But when you looked at that lineup, you had a really good core of guys featuring Adley Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. And then you also still have some of your old guards, such as Cedric Mullins. And, you know, I really thought this Orioles team was going to follow up on that magical season. But unfortunately, it just was not meant to be. I think their pitching problems were definitely exposed in this series. I mean, Game 2 was a killer, and Game 3 as well. But you also have to give the Texas Rangers credit because they were a really good situational hitting team. But in my personal opinion, I really think Game 1 was when, like, the whole series, like, changed. I thought that was the Orioles' best opportunity to really make some noise. And unfortunately, you had a failed attempt with runners in scoring position in the 8th inning. That was the inning that ended with the double play. And then you had Gunnar Henderson getting caught stealing in the 9th inning. Not good. And it was a real shame because I thought Bradish pitched really well, all things considered, in that game. It would have been nice to see them win that first game in front of their fans. And I want to say 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, excuse me. I thought the series was a lot closer than the actual series dictates, obviously being a sweep. But at the same time, the Rangers offense, like the Orioles ran into a buzzsaw in the Ranger offense. Just everything that the Orioles threw, they hit. And same thing in the series of Tampa. Everything Tampa threw, the Rangers hit. So it's the Rangers are just one of those teams right now where if you don't hold them to like 2 runs or 3 runs, you're just not going to win. And the pitching looked halfway decent. Evaldi actually, we should all know from the growing pains of Evaldi being in a Yankee uniform, but and couldn't stay healthy. But he just looks like a whole different pitcher now. Like the guy is still throwing 95 plus, even though he's had Tommy John surgery 2 times, I think now.
Twice, yeah.
So he's like a whole revived pitcher. Like, and also that offense, which a lot of people are not going to know the names to, like what was it, Garcia, Avila Garcia, I think is the guy.
Adolis Garcia.
Adolis Garcia, who's been amazing, by the way. That team has been on fire. You're not going to beat them offensively. So if you don't pitch well, you're not beating them at all.
Another guy who came up clutch to one of their unsung heroes was Evan Carter, the 21-year-old, who he had a big home run in that series against the Rays. And then he had another big hit in game 2. I think it was not long before Mitch Garver hit that grand slam. And as soon as Mitch Garver hit that grand slam, I think that was when you knew the series was over. I mean, granted, the Orioles did mount a little bit of a rally, but the fact of the matter is it always sucks when you score 8 runs in a postseason game and it's just not enough to win.
Well, it's rare because I think you and I have had this discussion before that 8 runs in the playoffs seems like 20. Like that's what it feels like. Or if you score 3 seems like 10 in the playoffs because the offense goes down because there's so much pressure to hit. These guys put so much pressure on themselves in the playoffs that they're going to strike out more than make contact in the playoffs because they feel they have to do everything in their power to win these games. And that's kind of what I felt with the Orioles, where they're so young with a lot of their prospects that just came up over the last 2 to 3 years. They were just not ready for the playoffs, it looked like. And that's what killed them.
Although, in contrast, you look at the Texas Rangers lineup, you had seasoned veterans like Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. Corey Seager was a machine for the Rangers this whole playoffs. He got big hits in the wild card series against the Rays, and then he set the tone in game 3 with that home run. Incidentally, in the same ballpark where he won a World Series MVP during that COVID-shortened year. So when it all comes down to it, and you look at that Texas Rangers lineup, that was a team that was just really good when it came to situational hitting. And even though that was a team that ultimately lost out on the tiebreaker with the Houston Astros, who we'll touch on in a little bit, I think that very well could help them going forward in the next round. And, let me get back to their pitching for a little bit. Jordan Montgomery was a really good number 1 starter. And, this series makes you wonder, what the heck were the Yankees teaching a lot of these pitchers that made it seem like they get better as soon as they leave? And
I mean, it sounds like they don't preach what they teach, to be quite honest.
Yeah, I mean, Montgomery pitched well in the round against Tampa before this one, and then you had Evaldi continuing to be a clutch pitcher in the postseason. Look what he did with the Red Sox in 2018.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's a beast. Well, even though he's probably got more metal in his arm than anybody else, but but you're right. Maybe that just makes him a machine. No pun intended, because the guy just keeps pitching. By the way, like he's a nasty pitcher. Like he's throwing 97, 98, and he's got a curveball to boot. Like this guy can throw, and I think he's got a splitter too. This guy can throw anything.
Yeah, and the other crazy part about the series, the things that we worried about with the Rangers, the bullpen that almost cost them the playoffs at the end of the season, we haven't really seen any issues with them. I think one of the big reasons probably could have been because the Orioles chances or waste opportunity may have bailed them out with their waste opportunities in the first game, or the fact that the Orioles never really had a chance in coming back in the last 2 games. But
Well,
Then again, at the same time, I was talking to your buddy Anthony Mara about this, and he's pretty much right. Like, any problems that a team has during the regular season, once you get to the postseason, doesn't really matter.
that's true. But I was going to say at the same time, the Rangers have been tone setters in every game that they play. You notice that they're first on the board every time in the games this postseason, and that's why they're winning, because they're setting the offensive tone early in every game. I guarantee you it got to the Orioles at some point that, oh God, the Rangers scored first again. How are we supposed to beat this team? And I think that's what was happening.
Well, there is one other element in play that is on the Texas Rangers side that's really going to help them. And again, I'll talk about him a little bit more later when we talk about the ALCS matchup. That would be the one and only forever giant, Bruce Bochy. 3-time World Series winner. We pretty much thought he was done managing after he retired in 2019 from the Giants. And I think the reason he ended up retiring was because this is a guy that was coming off hip replacement surgery. So he took a little sabbatical from the game. Then the Texas Rangers give him a call. They give him a really good sales pitch. And Nick, I don't think that he really would have come and managed them if he didn't know that they had the potential with that lineup that they had. And ultimately, he turns them around. They go from having that idiot Chris Woodward to Bruce Bochy, which is that's like being on an airplane and being stuck in coach, and then all of a sudden you get upgraded to first class.
I mean, it's funny you bring up Woodward, because do you remember the comment he made? What was it? The Aaron Judge home run, or whose home run was it? That it wouldn't have been a home run in 28 other ballparks or whatever he said.
Yeah, it was Judge. Oh my gosh, that was
that was the dumbest thing I ever heard. That's why he's not managing anymore, because he basically drove the Rangers into the ground before Bruce Bochy came back and took the managing job. But Bruce Bochy just has that veteran, old-fashioned style baseball that turns the team around, even for young guys. Now, I was concerned at first because the Rangers were a much younger team when he took over, and his way of baseball is old-fashioned. And what do we know about old-fashioned? It doesn't work anymore, usually.
I think it really depends on the circumstances, but yes, I tend to agree with that.
So he comes in, he changes the culture, and I just thought it was funny also that Bochy's like, I didn't feel like playing golf, so I just come back and take a job. I was like, okay, well, by the way, like, I know you're saying like it was a good sales pitch, but when Bochy gets offered a 3-year deal to come back, I think, how do you say no to a 3-year deal to come back and manage?
Also true, but again, like, he'd been out of the game for a few years. Bochy doesn't seem like the guy who'd want to just like go back into retirement after all he had done. But again, he did a deep analysis of the roster, and I think if you really looked at the Rangers, they probably had flashes a year ago that they could have been better. But the fact of the matter is, they weren't really managed well. And you also have to remember they had John Daniels as the GM, and this was a guy who stayed way past his expiration date. Chris Young, you have to give Chris Young a lot of credit for the way the Texas Rangers have improved. Like, he I can't remember. I think he was the one that traded for Garcia. I mean, just goes to show you how overrated John Mozeliak is with the Cardinals. Look how many young players he's given up over the years.
That's another guy. That's another guy that's overrated as a general manager.
And it's funny because everyone talked about, the Jacob deGrom acquisition during the offseason as a move that could possibly like be good for the Rangers. And people looked at deGrom's decision as, oh, he just went for the money. But when you really look at it, I think it was his secondary acquisitions that really made those work, because he goes out and gets Eovaldi, like, to beef up that rotation. You already had John Gray, who is better. And then after he traded for Scherzer, I said during an episode that it was the Jordan Montgomery trade that I think was just as important as Max Scherzer, because you needed that extra pitcher who could do well in a playoff series. So, in other words, it's not like, even with those injuries, it's not like he put his eggs in one basket.
No, I agree. I mean, we'll see if the Scherzer move actually pans out, because I feel like the only value towards that move is winning a World Series for bringing someone in like Max Scherzer. So if they don't win a World Series, I don't think that trade really pans out as full value for the Rangers because talks a big game, hasn't pitched a big game as of late. So I that one I'm going to put a question mark on until they win the World Series. But it is a good move. It helps the rotation. The DeGrom move was just a bust, in my opinion, right now. Like, and people are going to say to me, "Well, but Nick, he hasn't pitched." Well, thank you. You're proving my point. He's not pitching. He's hurt.
Well, I don't think he even threw more than 30 innings this year.
And I think that's why they put that stupid escalator clause in the contract that it could go higher or it could go lower, which now I'm sure the Rangers are thanking their lucky stars that that's in the contract because it's going to bring the contract number down a little. But if I'm not mistaken, I think that was like a $200 million contract plus that they way overpaid him. I got to look that up. But the Rangers just totally like oversold on that stock.
I would say what the Rangers did was the equivalent of what Jose the Marine did on The Price is Right when he bid $250,000 on that showcase. If you know what what blue I'm talking about.
Yeah, yes. So it's 5 years, $185 million. So they overpaid. Like the Mets were right to let him go. Like, because you can't pay him that. So he's making $37 million a year. So that's nuts.
Absolutely. And now we ought to talk about their opponents that they will be playing in the American League Championship Series because, Nick, I'm just going to say this right off the bat and cut right to the chase. There's no way the ALCS, in my opinion, goes less than the full 7.
I mean...
or 6 at least. I take that back. 6.
Anything is possible. I agree with you. If it goes 7, I wouldn't be surprised. It's going to go at least 5, I think, for sure. We're not going to see a sweep. I'm going to throw that one off the table now because both of these teams are too good to give up home games, in my opinion, to be quite honest. I think this is the first time you're actually going to see a series where it's going to come down to the last game because each team's going to win in their home parks. I think that's what you're going to see. And I think it's interesting because the offenses are kind of even. Maybe I would lean a little bit to Texas just because they're a little bit more on a hot streak right now. And you don't know what Houston's offense really is at the moment. But the pitching, I might actually lean a little towards Texas, believe it or not.
I tend to agree with that. Here's my only thing, though. Where I would lean towards Houston is in 2 simple aspects.
Experience.
Number one's the bullpen, and number 2, you pretty much just took the words right out of my mouth there. Experience. I didn't care, and you saw it during like the previews I made when I appeared on your show. You saw it when I gave my postseason predictions. I did not care about the ERAs of guys like the guys like Urquidy and everybody else. They've been there before in big games. And if you have Justin Verlander, I don't care if this is 40-year-old Justin Verlander on the mound. He is a pitcher that is built differently than people, I would say, that are half his age.
I agree. And obviously Justin Verlander's name holds a lot of value in the postseason, but I would say 3 to 4 years ago, that was a real legitimate threat. The Astros were going to win every game in the postseason that Verlander pitched. Verlander is definitely hittable now.
Yeah. He is, but he did well in that first game against Minnesota. And I think, Nick, this would be a perfect segue to talk about the series against the Twins. So if there's any series that nobody was shocked about, I would say it would be the one between the Astros and the Twins. The only thing that, in my opinion, was really a surprise looking back at it was, the fact that the Twins even stole a game at all. And
the Twins have struggled in the playoffs. That's just what they do.
And you have to give credit to Pablo Lopez where credit is due, because he pitched an absolute masterpiece, 7 shutout innings. And, a lot of people got false hope in thinking that the Twins were going to win the series. I was texting Dom a little bit during the game, and he said that he thought the Twins could do it. And I did too, if only because of the starting pitching. But then once you got back to Minnesota, that was when you remembered, oh, there's a reason why I was not high on the Twins at all. And I can understand why people like Dom and Touhey probably had faith in them, because, as I said, you had your top 2 starting pitchers were productive during the season. But ultimately, this is a lineup that is very boom or bust. And then you were reminded how deep that lineup of the Astros is. And when a lot of people thought that the Astros overpaid for Jose Abreu, I think he kind of put that notion to rest, because he hit 2 home runs in that game. One of them was an absolute bomb. It went into the second deck in the first inning, and you knew 4-0 was more like 14-0.
Right, like I said before. Yeah.
And then he hit another home run in the 9th inning of that game. But Nick, do you know who we haven't even mentioned in that lineup that's also been insanely good?
Well, you didn't mention Altuve. I don't know if that's the guy you're talking about, but
no, it's not Altuve. I mean, he had an okay series, but his series was nothing compared to Yordan Alvarez, who went
Yordan Alvarez,
7 for 16 in the series. That would be a .438 batting average, 4 home runs, and 6 RBIs.
That guy's a beast. Like in the playoffs, like he just when he comes to life in
Nick,
the playoffs.
I don't know if you saw the Nick, you okay there?
Yeah, I don't. You froze.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Where's the third? There we go.
You were about to make a point, so
okay. Hold on. Let me refresh my memory a bit with that point. Okay. So Yordan Alvarez, you could not pitch to him in that series. He absolutely torched the Minnesota Twins, and I think if you could make a case that there was an MVP for said series, it would have been given to him. But, having said that, the fact that he was getting a lot of those pitches to hit really tells you how good the Astros lineup is as a whole, in my opinion. And you want to know the scary part about Yordan Alvarez?
what?
Nick, I don't know if you saw this stat, but MLB Network posted a thing where if you looked at his numbers side by side from Big Papi in his prime, from I want to say it was about 03 to 09, they were identical, or pretty damn close to identical.
That's crazy. I mean, and David Ortiz is the clutch of the clutch when it comes to the playoffs. Now, the other thing I was going to say, how many times are we going to doubt the Astros and then they just prove everybody wrong? I feel like that's happened. And what is this, the 7th straight postseason that they've made the ALCS?
Yeah, and it's now gotten to the point, I think it was, I don't remember who it was, but one of my friends tweeted death taxes and the Astros making it to the ALCS.
Yeah, that's what the sick part. This team is so good that they make it to the ALCS every year. Like, everyone wants them to lose so bad. And instead of losing, they say, F you, we're just going to keep winning and winning and winning and winning. All we got to do is win, 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 no matter what.
Sounds like the old school New England Patriots, or I shouldn't really say old school New England Patriots, the Patriots that we grew up with. I mean, if you talk about old school Patriots from the 20th century, that would be, I would say, worse than the Cleveland Browns. But the Patriots that we grew up with is what the Astros remind you of. You get tired of them, but it doesn't matter. All you do by giving them that hate is giving them more strength, essentially, is what you're doing.
Right. And they're a dynasty. That's essentially what they're becoming.
Yeah, and if they win that World Series again, then I think you officially can officially crown them that, because this will be, if they find a way to finish the job, that would be their third championship in the last 6 years, and that's not including the fact that they've won 2 pennants in addition to that.
And people need to give it a rest with the whole cheating and garbage can, and if Jose Altuve was wearing a wire or they couldn't rip his jersey off or whatever. Like, people got to stop. Like, I get it. Like, we're Yankees fans and we've been over it for a long time. Like, people just got to give it up and move on. The Astros are such a good team that they've pretty much put those rumors to bed, essentially. And they just won, and they go out there and they win. That's all that matters. What cures all? Winning.
And guess what? Do people not realize how many other teams have been using elaborate cheating ploys in the past to try to help them? Let's not, like, I hate to compare them to Barry Bonds, but let's not act like the Astros were alone in doing this.
I can think of one right off the top of my head. Does London ring a bell?
Yep.
Yankees, Red Sox, Apple devices.
Yep. No.
I mean, like, everyone's looking for a slight edge to win. That's what people don't realize. And this is not just baseball. This is every professional sport. Everyone looks for an edge. Why do you think people were doing PEDs until they were finally tested in 2003? Like, because they got away with it, because it gave them an edge.
And because it's not even that. They also wanted to extend their career, continue to get paid, put money on their family's tables.
Right, but at the same time, like, it was to give them an edge. They were looking for any edge they could possibly get.
Yes. And the Astros pretty much have been using an edge, but we tend to forget that, and I hate to say this, and I need to scream it louder for those in the back, the Astros are arguably the gold standard of baseball.
I don't disagree with you.
And by the way, let me get to the Twins for a little bit, because I think we focused more on the Astros. You have to give the Twins credit where credit is due, because they finally took a monkey off their back in winning not even a series, but a postseason game, and that was in the series against the Toronto Blue Jays. Having said that, the Blue Jays kind of shot themselves in the foot, if we're being honest with you.
Talk about getting picked off on second base, Vladimir Guerrero Jr.
Oh my God. And I still am absolutely baffled by the bizarre decision to take out your best pitcher, who hasn't given up a run and hasn't even thrown 50 pitches. But let's get into this series. Like,
the Blue Jays, by the way, were a disappointment. That's all. I'll leave that one alone. But this series, the Twins, like, deserve better. That's the way I look at it. They were never going to win this series, but they definitely deserved an opportunity. And I hate to say this, because another former Yankee who actually performed well, Sonny Gray, until he got shelled in that last game, was actually pitching really well through the regular season into the postseason.
Yeah, he was. And it's crazy. You look at his career. He did well with Oakland, goes to the Yankees. He is an absolute train wreck. And then he goes to the Reds and Twins, and he becomes a solid pitcher. Again, you wonder what they're teaching all these Yankee pitchers down there.
It's called they can't handle the pressure in New York. That's what they're teaching them there. But I think, if I remember one of the stats that stood out, I think he only gave up 8 home runs in the regular season. I think.
Yeah. You know who else was good for the Twins was former Astros legend Carlos Correa. I mean, he did get a big hit in that game 2, the only victory that they got in that series, and he also was the one that got the hit that essentially put the nail in the Blue Jays' coffin in game 2. So I think you definitely have to give him a good amount of credit there for the Twins getting as far as they did and having what I would say was probably their best season since probably 2002, I want to say. Actually, no, 2003 and 2004 they won a division series game against the Yankees, but either way it wasn't really enough. And up until that, you've never really seen a free agent acquisition have a big impact for the Twins, at least not since Jack Morris in 91. So
They don't do well with free agency for the most part. Like if you remember, the Twins have a reputation of being homegrown out of the farm system. That's really where their money is made, if that's really what you want to call it. But they really don't sign people in free agency. That's not their game. Like the Carlos Correa move was kind of a shock to most of the Twins fan base because one, he's hurt. Two, they spent a lot of money that they usually don't spend, and they made it work. And they brought Sonny Gray in via a small trade, which didn't really cost them, I think, not much, and they had a shot.
Ultimately, though, I think the fact that this was a home run reliant lineup was their undoing. I mean, this is pretty much what happens when you have that approach every time you go up against the Houston Astros. So
you can't beat the Astros. What?
Right? Remind you of a certain team in the Bronx?
Yeah, really. But yeah, the Astros are always, like you said, the gold standard. Until any team beats them, they're always going to be the top team. They're always going to be on the top of the mountain until someone takes them down. And how are you taking them down right now? Like the Astros just have a complete team, and they keep bringing up young guys to fill the holes.
And before I move on to the National League, let me remind you guys this, for those of you who are still complaining about the cheating thing. Do you know how many players are left from that team?
Or actually, I think it's two.
Altuve,
Bregman,
McCullers, who isn't even going to get to pitch at all this postseason because he's injured. That's enough. McCullers, Verlander, and that's about it. Unless
people got to move on. People got to move on and leave that alone. It's enough already.
Because remember, Springer and Correa are gone. So are so many of the other supporting cast from that team. Like,
but
they don't even have the same manager anymore.
It's a joke.
Yeah. And at the risk of going on a little tangent, I do have to say, Dusty Baker is one of the most respected men in baseball history.
Okay, but you need to remember one thing.
Yeah.
Just because he took over as manager, it's the reputation of the team, not
the
manager.
I know. My point is, the team's just become so chained that we're focusing on the wrong thing. But that's just...
I agree with you 1,000% that it's the Astros' reputation itself where they say, oh, hey, Astros are cheaters, and this is what they do, and blah, 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 blah. We don't care who the manager is. Well, go blame Alex Cora if you want to blame somebody.
By the way, can I just say, Dusty Baker's like the parent of that kid in school that everybody hated. That's was really nice that everybody somehow loved.
Yes. And I just know from over the years on this network, we've had people complain about that the Astros will always be cheaters. Like, I know a reputation follows you forever. Like if you did PEDs, or it's even worse now. If you have a cloud over you of a rumor or speculation that either you cheated or you did steroids or you did something, domestic violence, even if you didn't do it, what happens to you, Hank? You get that reputation forever.
Actually, I was going to say the reputation's a tattoo, but yes.
I agree. Like once it's brought onto you, you can't get rid of it. Even if it never happened, it's there. And so that's what some sour Yankee fans will say that, we should have won a World Series in 2017. And I'm like, no, you shouldn't. It was not meant to be.
Guess what? We may have destroyed them at our own home ballpark, but garbage cans or not, we only scored 2 runs at what I like to call the juice box. Minute Maid Park. Haha, see what I did there?
It is a good ballpark, even though it's small. But it is
only
a nice
scored
ballpark.
2 runs in the 4 games away from Yankee Stadium. Don't tell me that that's a winning style. And how do you even know we would have beaten the Dodgers in the World Series?
It's a fallacy of a predetermined outcome. There you go. I said.
Thank you.
But my point is that yes, it will always be a fallacy of predetermined outcome because you never know what happens. And if they say let's just say they won that series. I don't remember what the rotation was for the Dodgers that year. I think Kershaw was still partially in his prime at that point.
It was Kershaw, Darvish. I don't think they had Walker Buehler yet.
It doesn't matter. You were not beating the Dodger pitching at that point in time at all.
No.
So,
but in any
people
event,
got to stop.
Speaking of the Dodgers, let's go on to the National League Division Series. And by the way, Nick, are you ready for this? Yeah. I know you were waiting all day for me to get into my gloat mode.
Yes.
Guess what?
What?
I hate to say I told you so, but guess what? I told you so. The Dodgers' percentage, in my estimation, of going to the World Series, this was all the way back in early September. Now, granted, I published that article back in like September 12th, if I remember correctly. But if you had talked baseball with me before that, I would have told you the same thing. The Dodgers' percentage of going to the World Series, in my estimation, 0.0% chance. Now, having said that, did I think that meant that they would get swept by an 84-win team like the Diamondbacks? Not necessarily.
That was bad. That was embarrassing.
But you look at a Dodgers lineup that has Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Max Muncy, and JD Martinez, guys who during the season all drove in 100 runs. They scored a grand total of 5 runs in the 3 games. By the way, I only mentioned like a good fraction of the lineup, but I think you get my point. And by the way, do you know how many hits? I wonder how many hits Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman got combined. Was it just one rinky-dink infield single?
That's bad. I mean, the Dodger lineup is overpaid and underproduced, and it has been like that the past couple of years. You ready for this reference? The Dodgers are the Dallas Cowboys.
I'm sorry, who was the guy in glasses right next to you that used that same analogy?
Oh, did you use that reference? Okay.
I did use that once with you.
Okay.
Actually, ironically, it was when you were on the show.
Okay, but I stand by it because if you look at both teams, they're overhyped. Every network overhypes them, and then what happens when they get to the playoffs? They underperform. I mean, it's funny because the Dodgers spend all this money. They go out and they get Freddie Freeman. They go out and they get Mookie Betts over the last couple of years. They have one rinky-dink World Series, which I don't count anyway, because it was COVID shortened, so I don't count it. So, because the Dodgers don't win that if that's a full season. I'll tell you that right
now. I'm going to say maybe. We'll never know, but then again, I still think the 81 World Series was more of a screwy World Series championship hot take. But that's a story for another day.
But I just think the Diamondbacks came to play. They came to play. They pitched. They hit. They had that cool moment in, I forgot what inning it was, whether it was the 6th inning or 7th inning. They had 4 home runs in a row.
Actually, it was the 3rd inning.
Oh, was it the 3rd inning? I thought it was
even home runs in a row, but they became the first team in Major League history to have 4 home runs in a single game. By the way, remember when I said the Dodgers needed to get an extra pitcher or 2 at the trade deadline?
They did nothing. Yeah, they did nothing.
It's not that they did nothing. Who is that pitcher they got again? Oh yeah, Lance Lynn, the same guy who I said in that article that I would be shaking in my boots to face with that ERA well over 5.
And he got panned. And he got panned. Like, absolutely panned. That's the guy you want pitching to save you from being swept?
Oh my gosh. People really thought that a team with that lineup, that pitching rotation had a chance to make a serious run in the postseason. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not going to say that the Diamondbacks, even though the Diamondbacks had a record that probably wouldn't be deserving of a postseason in any other year, if you look at that Diamondbacks team, they're no joke. Christian Walker, Corbin Carroll, who is absolutely phenomenal, by the way. Ketel Marte, who I said was an all-star snub during the season. You had Gabriel Moreno, their catcher, who they absolutely stole from the Blue Jays, hit 3 home runs in the series. The kid's only 23 years old. To have a catcher like that for years to come, do you realize how big that is to have that in your arsenal? And that's not even getting to their starting pitching. I said before, Gallen and Kelly were guys that you did not want to face in a playoff series. And funny enough, I said that if the Phillies were in the wild card series, that was the team that they probably would want to avoid. Well, ironically, they might be playing them in the next round anyway. But your bullpen with Sewald, Ginkel, and I can't remember the 7th inning guy's name, but I feel like if I typed out his name, it would give my spell check a stroke.
But the thing is, if I look at the numbers of the series, they scored 6 runs in 3 games. Now, I'm going to make an obscure reference here, but hopefully you follow it. Basically, the Dodgers should go join the SAG-AFTRA picket line because their bats protested.
I mean, considering they're in Hollywood, yeah, I think it would make sense.
Their bats protested. Where were they? They didn't show up. And Arizona just came to play on both sides of the ball. And what was it? Kershaw and who was the second pitcher that pitched in game 2?
Bobby Miller.
They had a grand total of 2 combined innings. 2 innings.
Nick, you want to know a fun fact?
Okay.
Do you know which Dodgers starter had the best ERA in this series?
Oh, no. I don't know.
Lance Lynn. 13.50.
What? Or wait a minute, or better yet.
All the failure.
Yeah, I was supposed to be scared of that team going into the postseason.
Their pitching was brutal.
And by the way, I don't want to hear a thing about the long layoff being an excuse for that Dodgers lineup.
Oh, please stop it with the long layoff excuse.
I've seen... Do people not remember the 2006 Yankees who had Derek Jeter, A-Rod, Jorge Posada, Johnny Damon, Bobby Abreu, Gary Sheffield? Remember how they did against the Tigers team that you and I thought that they would have waxed?
Yes, and
who was the only player in that series that actually did well for the Yankees?
Oh God, that was a long time ago. I don't even remember now.
Derek Jeter.
Okay, wow. But that makes sense at least because Derek Jeter's Captain Clutch, the playoffs. But
my point is, don't go telling me that an offensive lineup that carries you through like 95 to 100 wins with a rotation that's as wobbly as the Dodgers can dominate. Don't ever give me that argument again. I remember the 2004 to 2007 Yankees better than what I had for breakfast. And the only team that they beat during that stretch in the postseason was the team that was their little punching bag that they would always beat, and that was the Minnesota Twins.
I mean, I don't know, but I think it's actually kind of interesting, Philly and Arizona. I think that'll be an interesting takeaway.
Well, here's the thing. That series isn't over yet.
Well, I meant to say it will be interesting if it becomes Philly, Arizona, because that no one would expect that. First of all, Arizona would get destroyed. Played Philadelphia.
Well, I think Arizona can steal a game or two because, like I said, Gallen and Kelly are decent pitchers. And I remember I went to Philadelphia a couple weeks ago for that series where they played the Mets just because I wanted to check Citizens Bank Park off the list. And I talked to a few Philly fans during the series. They legitimately felt more scared of Arizona more so than, say, the Braves or the Dodgers. And the Phillies fans, but remember, people thought that the Phillies would play Arizona in the short series. So,
right. But I think they caught a break, Philadelphia, if they win. if they win and then they go to face Arizona, I think you might as well just put Philly in the World Series at that point. If
I think
that happens.
I agree with that because the Diamondbacks may have won regular season games at Citizens Bank Park, but the atmosphere at Citizens Bank Ballpark compared to that is night and day. Like the games and don't get me wrong, the games I went to at Citizens Bank Park were pretty packed and loud because they were late September games and you pretty much knew the Phillies were on the verge of clinching the playoff spot. But even the games I went to were a picnic compared to what they're going to be in the National League Championship Series.
Well, we'll just have to wait and find out to see what's next.
But now, as far as the Atlanta Braves go, look, I've been praising the Braves all season long, but even though I predicted the Braves, did I not warn you about their weak spot on their team?
Well, don't fire up the beast either.
Well, we'll get to that too. But as much as I've really been high on the Braves, I'd be lying if I told you that I was surprised that they're down for a few reasons. Number one,
they're bad.
Oh my gosh. Like, if it wasn't for that rally, like, they'd be dead.
Well, they would have been dead already. It would have been a sweep. I mean, their bats are terrible this series.
Nick, what do we often say about batting when it comes to the postseason?
It doesn't come in bunches like it does in the regular season.
Exactly. And the Phillies, what have I been saying about the Phillies? And I'm sorry to all, Tom, if you're watching this, I don't mean to be stealing your line. Don't disrespect the Phillies. Their lineup is insanely stacked. Remember, this was a team that nobody thought was going to the World Series last year. Now they're in almost an identical position, but now you give guys like Nick Castellanos, Jake Realmuto experience. Now that you have a full season with Rob Thompson as your manager, and now that your bullpen got better with guys like Craig Kimbrell, Hoffman, and Alvarado, you're telling me that team is not dangerous? Nick, I've been preaching this all season long, have I not?
You have. And what's even more... Yeah.
Even back in June, like, you can go look at their winning percentage since June. It was one of the highest in baseball.
It's a good point. And on top of that, I would also say that I think a lot of, two fan bases, the Braves and the Orioles, are probably kicking themselves big time right now because they thought, we're ready. We're going to make the big run. A lot of people, I think I said it on ETV, I thought it was going to be a Braves-Orioles World Series. And now we're not going to get either one.
Well, this is going to get to my next thing that I want to bring up. And Nick, I'm sorry if I have to steal your thunder by hijacking your banners. I am going to get to what I've written a blog about. I talked about the playoff format and that the Braves and the Orioles fans have been complaining about this all season long. I'm sorry, but you're focusing on the wrong thing.
Agreed.
If you were focusing on, like, if you really wanted a better path to the World Series, maybe you should have gone to the Wayback Machine and begged all those owners not to rub a genie bottle with Bud Selig on it and then extend the wild card series.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, like you asked a bunch of us like what we thought about the playoff format, and I'm trying to find what I wrote while I'm scrolling. But basically, I was saying the format, it's good and it's bad. Here it is. I like the 3-game wildcard format because the higher seed now has a small advantage. I disagree somewhat on more games because it's all a money play, obviously. We don't need more teams in the playoffs as that takes away from the authenticity of making the playoffs. If Manfred could have it his way, all teams would make the playoffs. Rob doesn't care about respect. He's Mr. Krabs and wants to make every last dollar. Baseball playoffs are too long as it is already. Now you asked me about the Braves, because that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Braves fans can complain all they want, but Manfred will never change it. Or he will just make an excuse and say it's MLB's fault, not his own.
or maybe actually show up to hit and maybe put up a better fight against a pitcher like Aaron Nola, maybe actually score a run off of Ranger Suarez and a bullpen game.
I agree. And
I mean, you have a chance to do that today, but
you know what? The way to combat that is beat the teams you're supposed to beat in the regular season. That's how you win. Okay? Now, the Braves were a division winner. They have no excuse. They had the easiest road to the World Series, in my opinion. And they're stinking up the joint right now. Big time. The bats are not hitting. The pitching is not 100% there. Philadelphia is just on fire, even as like a wild card. Like, they're just making it through the playoffs. But I'm sorry. Like, the fans can't blame the playoff format. Play better if you want to win. Winning cures all, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's another thing that I have to add to that too. Let's not pretend that the warning signs were there. I wrote an article about this too. Do you remember what I called the Braves?
I remember the article. I just don't remember what you called them.
Schrodinger's cat. Because the Braves basically, and this is another problem with like the format. The Braves really didn't have a meaningful game until game one, since like maybe after July, I want to say, if that even makes sense. And it wasn't until the games got meaningless that the depth of their pitching rotation really started to get tested. And by the time you were in a rotation that at best featured a Strider and a Max Fried who just came back from a blister and doesn't have Charlie Morton and doesn't have Ian Anderson, now you're seeing the dangers of having a pitching staff be shorthanded. Any team in that situation is going to struggle. And
agreed.
That's why, and look, I remember on Twitter, let's not act like this is revisionist history. I remember seeing a lot of Braves hitting the panic button during mid to late games in September. And normally I don't usually like seeing that, but I can't say that it wasn't like undeserved. You know, they literally were slumping. They weren't really finding their stride. They kind of were limping to the finish line, if that makes sense.
No, totally. Top of that, they were an offensively driven team, not a pitcher driven team. In the regular season, you can win games offensively be just trying to win games. In the playoffs, you gotta be able to pitch. You gotta be able to pitch, and you gotta be able to hit. So the season, they hit. They won a lot. That's why they won 100 plus. Now they're not hitting. They're losing games.
So we'll see what happens tonight. Let's see how they can bounce back in game 4, facing elimination in what many Philly fans like to call 3 hours in hell. Let's see if they can invert Bedlam to the bank. But am I optimistic in their chances? Absolutely not. And look, if this post ages as well as if this quote ages as well as sour milk come the next episode, you know I'm probably going to make a short video owning up to that. But I
would say that's a good bet.
After the Braves got all cocky with Ronald Acuna gyrating during his home run celebrations during the regular season, and after the way Orlando Arcia made fun of Bryce Harper for that base running gaffe.
Yeah, look what happened after all that. Look what happened. 2 home runs later, look what happened. Now,
you really think I'm going to be optimistic about the Braves after the way they talked the talk but didn't walk the walk?
I mean, the Dion shirts were hilarious, by the way. Did you see them?
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
the Phillies are absolutely hungry.
They woke up Bryce Harper like in a I don't know what's the disturbing way. Like, you know what Bryce Harper said? Screw you, I'm taking this series myself. And that's what essentially he's doing right now. And it's just unbelievable what they're doing. I think they're going to make the World Series again. I do.
Me too. And guess what? This is a discussion for a later day, but I think you could very well make a case that Bryce Harper is now in the top 10 among greatest Phillies of all time. Not
I
quite.
think, I think that's a good argument. I think definitely I could see it.
Not quite Mount Rushmore, but top 10. I'm not gonna dispute that.
I'll give you another take that might be even hotter than that.
Okay.
Better than Trout.
Oh, whoa, slow down there. I don't know if I'd go that far because Mike Trout had an insane stretch, but
How many World Series does Trout have?
Okay, is that really fair to hold against Trout? I mean,
Yes. He was supposed to lead the team as a star. He was paid star money. And by the way, he had Touhey, and they still did not win.
Hold on, star money? You mean?
Yes, deal with the devil. Correct. But he had plenty of stars. He had Pujols. He had Touhey. They didn't win anything. Nothing. What did Bryce Harper have over the years? It was mostly him. Until now.
Well, not necessarily. Trey Turner was his teammate with Washington, and Trey Turner was one of the best shortstops in baseball for like a 5-year stretch. You had Steven Strasburg, you had Ian Desmond, you had Ryan Zimmerman. I wouldn't say that was necessarily a team.
Okay, but I would say it's B level compared to Harper being A level, though.
Okay, I'll somewhat say that that's fair.
For Trout, Shohei's A level to an A level with Trout, and they didn't win. They didn't make the playoffs.
Oh, I didn't even mention Max Scherzer, by the way, but yes.
At least Harper was making the playoffs consistently and was in the discussion every year. Now Harper has a chance to win a second World Series, and
he hasn't won a World Series yet.
I mean, he has play in a second one and win. I think if they go to the World Series, I think they will win this year. So you got to give him in the ring debate. He would obviously be leading.
Okay, I'll give you the ring debate, but overall, I don't know if I would put him ahead of Trout because the problem with that thinking, in my opinion, is baseball's a team game. You only get to bat once every 9 times in the order. You can only field the ball that's hitting your direction. So I don't know that I really want to go there. I don't know that that's fully fair. And after all, let's not forget Mike Trout played for Artie Moreno. I mean, come on, that alone is, as this banner says, deal with the devil. Having said that, though, if we're talking about guys that have been clutch, yeah, I don't entirely disagree with you, but I would be so hard pressed to put Bryce Harper ahead of Mike Trout just because of the World Series rings.
The one last argument I would make is that I think Harper. Well, they both have had their issues with health for sure,
right. Mm-hmm.
But I think Trout has missed more games.
Yes,
by far, and Trout has been more of a disappointment. I wouldn't say complete disappointment. I would just say he's falling into the disappointment category because he had such high value coming up as being the name and face of baseball and hasn't won anything.
Yep. Well, anyways, there was a lot of other news that we were going to get to, but I think there was so much that happened during this playoffs. I don't think we could really get to that.
Let's do one more. Do the Eppler, because that's a big story.
Yeah, I mean, faking IL injuries. Oh boy, Billy, you dumb messed up there. And granted, I thought when he resigned, it was probably due to the fact that there was a new president in charge, but I think there could be more than that. So
the report says that he resigned.
Mm-hmm.
Now look at me. Resigned. Now, for people who are listening to this on audio, I'm air quoting the resigned. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is, and I said this on ETB, which would have dropped already yesterday, I think he was basically told, walk away, we'll say you resigned, and hopefully it doesn't get out and get leaked. But here's the problem. When you have something like this, when you have an iPhone, what happens? Or you have a device, what happens?
I'm going to say it louder for the people in the back. Bad things.
So I'm going to tell you right now, this probably got leaked because I don't think this story was supposed to be leaked. So the headline says he resigned. Let's read between the lines. he got fired for doing something that he was not supposed to be doing.
And I think Steve Cohen probably knew about this too. And
yeah, but Steve Cohen's not going to get touched. He's the big money owner.
He probably knew something fishy was going on as soon as he found out. I wish you had the Vince McMahon sound effect.
Oh, I don't have that one. I wish.
But you know exactly where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
You're fired.
I mean, here's the thing. I think he was going to leave anyway when David Starnes was brought over from Milwaukee. I think he was going to leave because he became Eppler's boss. I didn't understand that at first, why Eppler would want to stay there anymore when Starnes took over.
Yeah, so he could be his coffee boy. Yeah, no thanks.
Yeah, that was never going to happen. But now, in my opinion, Eppler can't get a job ever again. Like, you got to hold him accountable. Now, Tom asked me a question. I'll ask you the same question. Do you think that Eppler is kind of the first when it comes to this? Because I think Jeff Passan, who's a MLB, ESPN MLB insider, I was reading, came out and said that this is not the first instance of this type of stuff going on around in baseball.
Oh no, I'm sure that's happened before, but I think other GMs probably did a better job at covering it up.
He got caught. His hand got caught in the cookie jar. And now, and Tom was saying to me, like, does this mean that because he got caught, now everyone's going to get caught? What I think is going to happen, he got caught, now everyone else is going to be investigated, is what I think is going to happen. Because now they have proof that it's being done. So, Eppler should be banned. Banned. Not allowed to have a job anymore. And Hank, you remember a specific incident with a certain Mets DH who everybody hated. What was his name? Vogelback?
Mm-hmm.
I almost said Vogelsong. That's another player. Vogelback. Or as Frank the Tank says, Vogelfat. But do you remember when he was put on the IL for mental health situation?
Mm-hmm.
People are speculating that that's where that stuff kind of started.
Nick, you know what I'm about to say to that? Why am I not surprised?
So Eppler's got to go. Eppler's reputation is already soiled, so it really doesn't matter.
Soiled it.
I knew you were going to do that. That's another sound effect I should really get. That would be a good one.
Well, to be honest, I talked about how bad he was with the Angels even before he went to the Mets, but still.
But his career, I don't know if his career will be over because everyone knows everyone, and eventually he might find a job somewhere. But I don't think he's going to work for the next 2 to 3 years, at least. I think his reputation is now going to follow him. It also doesn't help that he was a bad GM with the Mets.
Yeah. Well, actually, he wasn't a bad market. He wasn't a bad GM with one team, but two teams, both of whom were big market. Nick, do you have the Price is Right sound effect somewhere?
Wait, I gotta find it. Where? Oh, come on, Paige. Where is it? Oh, there it is. I got it. Okay, what do you need?
He wasn't just a bad GM with one big market team, but another two big market teams.
That was good, Hank.
Yeah, no. He was, in fact, I'm going to go a step further and say that he was as incompetent as Frank insists that New Jersey Transit is.
Oh, jeez. Would you say Eppler is as inept as the coupons?
That's debatable.
Okay.
Debatable.
Maybe that's for a short video someday. Or maybe when we hit the off season, we need to do some content. We can go into the Eppler stuff more. I mean, It's unbelievable to me.
You want to know one video I'd love to do, which, and again, I don't mean to poke the bear when I come to like talking about the Mets, but like top 10, a good blog or video I'd want to do is top 10 events that happen that can be described as "that's so Mets."
Oh, that's a good one. By the way, I just want to say one more thing because it relates to this also, and then we can finish the episode. When you look at the inner workings of the Mets over the
Mhm.
years, you notice that they are always being investigated for something. Do you remember the Mickey Callaway situation with the Mets being investigated? That was the whole thing with the journalist and the female journalist and all that stuff that went down and everything. What is going on with the inner workings of the Mets? What do you make of them always getting investigated for these situations?
Um, can I quote McGonagall from Harry Potter? I don't know if you know that
Yes,
scene where,
a
why
little
is
bit.
it when something bad happens, it's always you guys? When she points at Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Yeah, that's what I want to know. Why is it when something scandalous happens, it's almost always you guys?
but,
I think
yeah,
number one, the workplace environment was pretty toxic when the coupons were owning the team. That's for sure. And number two, I think Cohen probably hasn't done his homework on some of the guys that he's hired. Now, I'd like to think maybe that'll change with David Stearns, but let's also not forget he hired a guy that seemed like he had a winning track record with the Cubs, but then let's just say politely say he pulled the Brett Favre.
oh Jesus.
And then yeah, those are the only incidents I can think of. And didn't they have another GM get arrested for a DUI?
Yes, I have
Now,
to look
why
it up.
you'd get arrested driving intoxicated in White Plains, I don't know, considering I live not too far from that area. That's a story for another day.
Oh, Zach Scott.
Yeah.
That guy was a jerk, like every way, shape, or
I
form.
just
That's why I'm saying, why are the inner workings of the Mets workplace environment so bad? That's what I don't get.
I'm somewhat convinced that the coupons may have cast a spell as soon as they took Doubleday away from full control of the team.
That's a good point, but I don't know. Do you have
So
anything
remember,
else?
the Wilpons took full control in '87. That was a year after they last won a World Series.
That's right.
Look at
Yep.
all the things that have happened in the Mets. Like, uh, is it really that much of a coincidence when you look at it? It'd be one thing if the Mets were just like losing and nothing. It would be one thing if the Mets won a stretch of years of losing, a la the Cleveland Indians from 1960 to I want to say 93, maybe. But the Mets just had weird and wacky things happening. So
It's a good point.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's possible that this is what Fred Wilpon did.
But in any event, I don't know. Is there anything else left to discuss? I mean, you guys will be what almost near the World Series by the next episode, possibly.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're either gonna be halfway through the ALCS or the World Series, as far as I'm concerned. And Nick, I have a feeling that some of these the championship series might be pretty long. But in any event, thanks for hopping on today. Obviously, it was too bad we couldn't have Touhey today, but I'm sure hopefully we will have him back next week. And I want to say thanks for doing this on such short notice. Really appreciate that. And I mean, after all, you are, other than Brady Reuter, I think you're pretty much our recurring guest on this show. But in any event, I just want to give you guys a friendly neighborhood reminder. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our social medias. You can find us at HFTC ETB on I'm sorry, X. Fuck you, Elon. X, Instagram, and Facebook. And of course, you can follow the network at ETB Network. Got a lot of good stuff for you. Also on X, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And last but not least, we have a YouTube channel. I would say you're doing yourself a disservice if you do not hit that big red button down below, or ring that bell for that matter, because you're going to want to catch up with our episodes. And last but not least, there's a website, and I hear there's a few blogs that are going to be coming out. There may or may not be a writer on this who hosts this show who contributes a lot there. I don't know. He probably knows what he's talking about there. And in addition, you'll find some other great stuff and information as well. We got some other great bloggers on the team as well. And Nick, as always, it's a pleasure to be talking baseball with you. Thank you for joining. And tell us where we can find you before we sign off.
We can find it. I may, if I can talk, at ETB Sports for Empty the Bench, which is the namesake show of the network. At ETB Network for the full network. You could see me on there at Morgasen Radio for social media. That's where you can find me.
Yep, and on behalf of Nick Morgasen, I'm Hank Indictor. You just watched episode number 15 of Hitting for the Cycle. We will see you guys later. Have a good one, guys.